Hello, this is Tyga Anderson. Today we'll be learning how to do a basic SKNA analysis from the data that we got from the lab chart template that we made last time. We're going to start by opening the file that we saved from last time. As you recall, last time we saved a selected file that only accounted for all the clean data in the recording and cut away the noise at the beginning and the end of the recording. Our data is loaded now, but I only see the first channel, and that's because all the other channels are hidden away here, which LabChart does sometimes when you load it. So I'm just going to drag up all the channels from before so that we're able to see all 6 channels. You'll notice last time we only saved the good middle portion of the recording and not the very beginning and the very end of the recording where the patient put the monitor on and took the monitor off. So you'll see that in the beginning there's no noisy bit, and at the end there wasn't any noisy bit. So next we're going to look to the top left corner where it says Datapad, and we're going to go to View Datapad. So we need to set up which variables we want to extract from this data first. So the first thing we should do is to select Date. And we want to make sure the format is in date format as well, and you have many options here just like Excel. And the next column that I want to target is time. So go to Selection and Active Point, and just exactly where the date is, right above is time, and make sure the format is also correct as well. And the next 2 pieces of data that I want to extract are SKNA and heart rate. So I'll start with SKNA, and I can select from any of the source channels. So I'll choose SKNA, and I want to take the average SKNA. And I'll choose general format for this variable. And the very last piece of data I want to extract is heart rate. So out of all the options to extract data, I'm going to select channel 6 or heart rate, and we'll take the average, and we'll also use a general format for this one. So now that we've created the columns of data that we want to extract, we want to extract date, time, SKNA, and heart rate, it's time to go back to our chart view. So we can go where the window tab is to chart view so that we can see this again. And we'll go ahead and go back up to Datapad and select Multiple Datapad Add. And so here we'll have the time to select data from every second, minute, hour. We can really customize what kind of data we're looking for. We can also select from whole file or current selection. So how current selection works is if we want to only take data from one segment, we can always go to Multiple Datapad Add and take data just from this segment. And we can take data from this segment every second, every 5 seconds. We can really do anything. But since we're going to be taking data from the entire file, because we've already cleaned the beginning and the ending of the file, and since it's a long-term recording, this is a 24-hour recording, and we often do up to 7 days of recording, we want to take data from every minute. So I'll select whole file in this case, every minute. So now that the multiple datapad add function is done summarizing all the data, we can go back to the top left corner to Datapad View and see all our data. And so this is a minute-by-minute summary of SKNA and heart rate by date and time. So you have the option of editing within Datapad view. For example, I can select this top row and I can right click and I can always delete this row, which I will because there was an error in the first heart rate calculation, which is typical for the first and last heart rate calculation for there to be an error. But my recommended workflow is to open up an Excel file and to copy all this data into the Excel file. So to make things easy, I'm going to pull these things up side to side. I'm going to select the top left corner to highlight all the data in this data pad. I'm going to right click and select copy, and I'm going to go over to my Excel file and I'm going to right click and select paste. And there's all my data. So we'll see here, sometimes it copies over and it's in a different format, so make sure it's in the time format and the date format within the Excel file. And so the next thing I generally do is I retitle the rows and make sure there's only one row that's a header, and I create a new column. And I call this column noise equals 1, where I can go through the recording and denote every row that I think should be eliminated from our analysis. So now we can go back to our chart view and see our recording. And just so I can see a little bit better, I'm going to grab this center line and expand the chart view. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, and I'm going to go through the recording and see if I can find any noise that I don't think should be included in our analysis. So something that might be helpful is auto scaling, or there's this continuous auto scale function as well. And what happens during the continuous auto scale function is it'll continuously change the scale. So this could be a helpful function, this could sometimes not be a helpful function, but I prefer to find a scale that I like, such as this one, and go through the entire recording with the same scale. So here I stumbled upon a section that I think might be noise. I'm suspicious because the heart rate fluctuates to levels that I don't think are possible. And so I'll look in a little bit and I'll zoom in to 50 to 1 or 20 to 1 and to see what's happening here. And I don't think this heartbeat is very credible. So I'm going to say that this section around 10:42 a.m. to about 10:43 a.m. is not very credible. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to denote 10:43 a.m. or 10:42 a.m. rather as noise. And I can go throughout the entire recording in a similar way and highlight different areas that I don't think are very credible recordings. Such as this section right here at 10:47 a.m. and I'll go through and denote them as 1. So I'm just going to go through the entire recording very quickly. And you can proceed in the recording by clicking to the right on this bar, or you can use the arrows on your key. And you can also scroll. So there are many different ways that you can do this. I just fast forward through the process, and honestly I thought it was a very clean recording. So there weren't too many examples of large areas that I needed to cut out. So now that we're done, I'm going to grab our Excel sheet and look at our data. So a common thing that we want to analyze when we're doing SKNA analysis is the relationship between SKNA, or skin sympathetic nerve activity, and heart rate. So one way we can do that, first I'm going to go down to the bottom of our data because I know that there's going to be a number error with our heart rate right here, and we don't want to include that data into our analysis. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to select all our data, and to analyze we can use pivot tables. So I'm going to select Insert, Pivot Table, into Existing Sheet, and I'll just select an open area in the Excel table. It could be anywhere, but I'm going to select this area for right now, and a pivot table will emerge. And so in my rows, I'll select the date. For values, I want to select SKNA and heart rate. Notice how here it says count of SKNA. We want to select the drop down and value field settings, and instead of count, we want to select average. Same with count of heart rate. We'll go to field value settings or value field settings and select average heart rate instead of count. And then the last thing we want to do is we only want to analyze recording where there is no noise. And so right now this is the average of all SKNA and all heart rate through the first 2 days. But instead, we want to eliminate all the noise. So we only want cells where noise is blank. And so this is our updated average SKNA and heart rate. And I'll clean up this pivot table by only selecting the dates. So this is the average SKNA and average heart rate for this patient on June 1st and June 2nd, 2021. Another tool we want to use when analyzing SKNA and heart rate data is a scatter plot. So to generate a scatter plot, I'm going to start by highlighting all our data and going up to the top right corner and selecting Filter. So I want to deselect all the data that I think is not useful or analyzable because of noise or artifact. And so I'm only going to select data where the value here is blank. Next, I'm going to select all the SKNA and heart rate data and drag it all the way to the bottom. Then I'm going to, while everything is highlighted, I'm going to insert scatter plot to develop a scatter plot like this. So we can already tell that heart rate is on the y-axis and SKNA is on the x-axis just based on the values. And in the top left corner, in Add Chart Element, I'm going to add a couple things to make it a little bit better. So perhaps some axis titles, and change the title to something more suitable. And finally, I think an important thing with this plot is to add a trend line. And we can always add more information about this trend line, such as the equation and the r-squared value. And so this is a pretty typical scatter plot between SKNA and heart rate. We generally see a positive correlation. This positive correlation makes a lot of sense when we visually look at the lab chart recording. So this is an example that we saw in the first or the second episode when we were setting up lab chart, but an elevated SKNA or a nerve burst leads to accelerated heart rate and a higher heart rate. That was how to do a basic SKNA analysis. I hope you learned something. In the next episode, we'll be looking at how to do spectral analysis.